Hello, welcome to this video. My name is Sebastian. I am the creator of MobiFlight, and in this tutorial I will show you off some cool tricks that we can do with MobiFlight, and we will use a very practical example being a transponder unit that we make work with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. All right, it's so good to have you. I'm very excited about this tutorial. It's the first video of 2022 for me. This time it is not going to be a release review. No, it is going to be a tutorial. I just recently created for myself a transponder and I thought, wow, there's so much cool things that I can show with that. So regardless whether you are a seasoned MobiFlight user or you're just starting out very new with MobiFlight, I bet there is something here in for you to take away and apply in your upcoming MobiFlight project. So what can this transponder do? This transponder can go through these different digits and allow us to use the encoder to manipulate the different positions, the different digits, to our kind of based on what the ATC assignment was. For example, maybe they say set it to 7000 because you are VFR traffic, and then you can see it's actually fairly easy to get that to work. And if they say please ident, well, then you can click or push the ident button and the ident mode is triggered. And if they say, can you please turn your transponder off? Well, then you can turn it off, of course. And when they remind you that they cannot see you on the radar, they cannot identify you, that you please make sure that your transponder is turned on, well, then you switch it on real quick from off to altitude. Let's review real quick what a transponder is, what kind of function it has, and also how we operate it as pilots and especially also in the sim. So I have here a transponder unit made by Garmin. It's a fairly new one, a GTX 345, and we can see the transponder is having a code that is displayed on the screen. There's also an indication for altitude and a flight ID. And basically, these are the main data points that are transmitted from a transponder that is installed on your aircraft, transmitted to the ATC folks that are taking care of you, so they will see additional information about your aircraft on their radar screen. Typically, as soon as you receive actual ATC services, such as when you are on a IFR flight plan, or for example, if you're receiving flight following even as a VFR participant, then you will get assigned a specific code that is either very individually identifying your aircraft, or you are sharing it with other participants in the ATC system. To be able to punch in this code into the transponder unit, there might be different ways for doing that. So this particular unit offers us digits or numbers from 0 to 7 so that we can punch in the so-called squawk code into the unit. In this case, the assigned squawk code would be 3571, and yeah, so this is what we would use these numbers at the bottom for. We also have on the left-hand side, we have a group of additional buttons, and those buttons are used to put the transponder in a different mode of operation. So there is the off button, which shuts down the unit completely. There is the standby button, SBY, that would turn it on, but it would not yet transmit any information about the aircraft. And you can put it then also into the on mode, So then this would mean that we would transmit the code part, the squawk code, the 3571 in this case, to ATC. And the last mode is typically the altitude mode. Altitude encodes, or as the word says, the transponder encodes the currently flown altitude using standard barometric pressure and transmits this information also to ATC together with, for example, your flight registration number. So super helpful information for ATC to better distinguish your aircraft as a specific target on their radar screen. Sometimes, however, there's still a lot going on and they're not sure which kind of little dot you are, and they will ask you to please ident, and that is what the big button in the center is for. Ident means that when you press it and ATC receives it, then they will see your aircraft light up, show up better, more clearly visible on their radar screen to make it easier for them to identify you. And the last button of this group, it's the VFR button. So there is a standard code typically assigned to VFR traffic in the US, that is 1200, in Europe and most other parts of the world, that is 7000. So that's kind of a shortcut button to, instead of having to punch these codes in manually digit by digit, you just push this button and then the correct code is set. There is also some additional buttons on the right hand side. So this unit also provides more than just the typical transponder functionality. You can, for example, also start off a timer when you're in a hold or something. It's sometimes very handy to have a timer. There's of course also other options and settings to be configured by the pilot, which are typically not modeled in a flight simulator, and so they're not really relevant for us. All right, so I have MobiFlight started now. It's a complete new and empty configuration. The only thing that you see is already enabled is the logging down here. You can do that in the settings menu, and it is especially useful during the time of configuration. So this is probably tip number one. Enable logging to get a little bit more feedback about what MobiFlight is doing in the background. So the next tip is actually to use MobiFlight also in offline mode. I will start configuring stuff without having an active connection to the flight sim, but you will see that we can still make some good steps with the configuration. So I'll do this and go to the settings and we'll enable offline mode for now. Okay, so we will start configuring the LCD display. So this is something that gives us immediate feedback and it's super interesting. We have one LCD currently configured, and it is a LCD with 2 rows and 16 characters. Okay, I will call this the transponder display, and I will go here and edit the configuration. First of all, before I worry about what offset or what sim variable I'm going to use, I will first pick the correct device, and I will test real quick if LCD2 is the one that I would like to configure, and I was lucky to pick the correct one. So now I'm going to erase everything in here. So this is a representation of our display. We have 2 rows and 16 characters. I will start punching in transponder, like the short form, and then I would like to display the transponder code like this. And we also have to deal with the mode. And I mentioned that we have the ident function, and we will make this show up when we are pushing the button and the ident or the transponder is in ident mode and transmitting this as additional identification signal. And then, as you saw, there is a little indicator for the digit that we're trying to set with the help of the encoder button. So we will use this caret symbol. And well, if I hit test now, what I can see is, oh, great. We have all the things in the right place and we are happy with the display setting. And now we can start and think about how are we going to make this actually show the real information from the flight sim. So we can always reference a variable, or we can always reference a variable by the dollar symbol for every configuration that we create. We will use a preset. We will use Microsoft 2020 presets here. I know that Microsoft generic avionics will give us the transponder code as a preset, and it asks us with an index which transponder unit we would like to get the value from. In this case, the plane will have only one, so we are fine choosing the index number 1. Then I'll get this value from the sim. It's 4 digits, and I will make it display here on this display. That's super cool. That should work. Whenever I get 4 digits out of the sim, those 4 digits will get replaced, and MobiFlight is smart enough to do it right aligned, so filling it up from coming from the right towards the left. As I mentioned, even that we do not have a active session with the sim just yet, since we are in offline mode. If I activate this and I put it in run mode, I can see that there's something happening. So I can see that my value from the transponder is getting substituted by 0. And 0 is because we're reading this from the sim. Now we can statically, for example, by using a transform field, we can statically set it to 1200. And you will see that all of a sudden this 1200 is also displayed there. All right, let's leave it as 0 for now, because we want this to be read from the sim later anyways. And the next one is the transponder mode. So the transponder mode coming from the sim. Let's do this also real quick here. Let's prepare this. It's also in the avionics section, and I'll grab it from here. It's called transponder state. It will ask us for this index again, and we will use the same index, of course. I can see that it says transponder state. It says enum, and well, that means that the transponder will not give us like an off, on, standby, or any of these letters that we saw first, or these words. It will actually give us a code like 0, 1, and so on. And I happen to know that if we go to hopmobiflight.com, we don't even have to authenticate to do this, but if we go to the preset list and we'll go to the outputs and we look for something like transponder, then since it's the same source for our presets too, we will find transponder state on this list. And here nicely in the description area, there is an explanation for what these different states could be: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so we're good for now. I think it is absolutely okay to not implement all the different transponder states necessarily. So for example, off makes sense, standby makes sense because standby is used while we are on the ground, and on is used on is used when we want to actually put it into transmission mode. But more importantly, altitude is the one that we want to set whenever we become airborne. So these three actually really matter: off, standby, and altitude. The other ones like test and ground are not so important, and they are also not typically modeled in the planes really, and also are not relevant for the online networks like Ivao and VATSIM, if I'm not mistaken. So correct me if I'm wrong, leave a comment, but I will just focus on off, standby, and altitude, which is going to be what I'm using when I fly online. So it would be 0, 1, and 4. All right, so back to the transponder state. With this in mind, I can already go here and say, okay, if the value is 0, well, then I can set it to off. And I use it, so we can use this compare tab for this function. And I can say, I know if it's not 0, then it's not going to be off. Then for now, with the first step, let's say it's standby. Okay, transponder mode. So as soon as we now activate this line, and we're still not reading anything from the actual sim, but the default value is 0, so it will give us off. That's nice. Now we have something to play with, and I'll go back to the transponder display, and I can substitute the mode now, or that is what I would like to do. And I can do that by referencing another additional config. So here I will have a list up to 6 at the moment, which allow me to reference the value that comes out of the other config. In this case, it would be off now by a placeholder. And this placeholder I can now use in here. So that's really handy and very, very useful. And I decided to replace mode by just 3 because I know it's on, off, or standby, which we all can use for, three letters for. Perfect. All right, so if we go now and hit OK, then all of a sudden we see off. Isn't that great? I think that's pretty cool. How do we do this here so that we not only get off and standby, we actually want to have standby or on. And we will use another concept going beyond the comparison settings and just setting it to a string. These fields here typically allow for me to put in formulas. So I can say something like if, and I reference the current value with the dollar symbol. If if the dollar sign equals to 1, then I know it's going to be standby. And otherwise, I want to set it to altitude. So now you're going to say, okay, what if it's 2, then it should be test, and if it is 3, then it should be on. But we will get that. We will get to that later. For now, it's good for me. It's good enough for me. And what I can do now, I can statically set this to 1. And it's going to switch over to standby, and it will also update on my transponder. And I can go here, transform to, and it will switch over to altitude, because that is what we're pretty much told MobiFlight to do with this little logic element here with this comparison function. That's pretty cool. So that's a new concept that I just introduced. These, we call it the expressions, or sometimes you hear people on the chat, on the Discord channel, refer to it as the NCalc formula or something, because that's the library that MobiFlight is using under the hood. So this is pretty awesome. And as you can see, we're still haven't connected to the actual sim. We can do this kind of testing also to make sure that our rules or our configuration is working correctly. We can test it this way. Okay, I think now let's add the ident. All right, the transponder ident. That is going to be the last one, and then we will start the sim. Okay, so let's choose a preset group again. So I think I saw it under avionics too. So we have transponder ident. It's going to ask us for the index again, and then we will see that this time this data type is bool. Bool means true or false, and this also results in a 0 for false when it's not active and a 1 when it is active. So now it is going to be also interesting. We'll take the same approach. We'll take the same concept and apply it in this case too. So we say if the current value is 0, well, then we don't want to show anything, and we're going to use two placeholders. So for us to make nothing show up for with a length of 2, we just use two spaces. Two spaces on the LCD display will be just empty and not displayed at all. But the single quotes, they still help us to first identify that, hey, we're dealing with a string here. And second, it also makes visible that we have something empty there, something invisible, the spaces. If the value is 1, well, then you might already guessed it. We will set it to ID because that is what we would like to display on the display. So same idea again. We are going to substitute this information on our display, and we will use the config references. So now the only thing that we have to take care of that is we are using a different placeholder. So this could be a special character such as a question mark, and then we activate this, and then from this time on we will be able to use this placeholder in the display configuration too. All right, so now that I saved it, we'll see that nothing is displayed because we're reading this as 0 because we're not connected yet. Let's statically set it to 1 for the moment, and you will see immediately it is changing over to ID. It's a nice trick with this transform to set it to the desired values so that we can, just confirm that our configuration is working correctly. The only thing that we have to really take care of and not forget is that we disable the statically set value, disable the transform field once we're getting to the point that we actually want to work with the information from the sim. Let's go ahead and think about the input configuration. So we have this encoder, and we have this push button that is built into the encoder. And as I already demonstrated, what we would like to do is we want to make the caret move when we are using the input button, just digit by digit, so that it shows us which is the digit that we're going to actually manipulate or set with the encoder dial function. So let's prepare this. So this is going to take a little bit of time, and by then the flight sim is probably loaded completely. So let's go here and we call it caret position. And we will introduce another concept which is pretty cool, which got added not so long ago. I believe it was in version 9.0. We'll work with MobiFlight variables, and we will use this switch. And here's another trick that I would like to point out. If I know that I have a button here, but I forgot the name, I can, since I'm currently in debug mode, I can just push this and I'll see the name that it shows here, encoder 3 switch. The module that I'm using right now, it has generic names for the different devices, and so it's a little bit harder to guess which one is the correct one. But with this trick, it's really easy to identify which one I just pressed. So encoder 3 switch, and what are we going to do with this? So we have the MobiFlight variable as an action type. So we have these different types, and this is one of them. And we have a number, so we can also make mathematical transformations. So every variable is going to be initialized as 0. If I use this thing here, like $+1, so what is going to happen is every time that I push the button, it's going to increment this value at this variable by 1. And I will show you this now. Transponder, we don't see it, but that's why we are going to create a output configuration here for the modified variable. And I forgot what the name was that I put, so I'll go back here and, oh, I used the default name. Let's use a better one. Let's say transponder caret. And at the moment, yeah, you have to copy that to your clipboard. That's probably the easiest way of doing this and making sure that the name is the same one. So it's case sensitive, uppercase, lowercase, everything matters, spaces in between, and so on. Good. Let's activate this. And we can see that there is a 0. So I will push the button again and we'll see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's amazing. That's really, really cool. It is actually working. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to move our caret 11 digits over because we only have 4. So I'll go here again and I will just say, take this and do a modulo 4. I think that's the right way of pronouncing modulo. So this will make that an 11 becomes a 3. And after the 3, there's a 0, and it's going to wrap around. It's going to go from 0, 1, 2, 3, and then when it reaches the 4, actually wraps around. So this gives us nicely these positions where we actually would that we actually want to use for the input. Now that I am at this point, I will switch over real quick to the world map. I will take another aircraft. I will take the 152 and I will select a departure airport such as this one, and I'll put us here on the general aviation parking spot. Sweet. Fly. Great. I hope I did not make a mistake by using the evening hours. I hope it's gonna be enough light in there so that we see everything just fine. We will use this as a precondition, which is another concept that I'm introducing with this video today. So we were saying that whenever we are using the switch here, the encoder, that we want to manipulate the digit of the respective position. So let's start with transponder digit 1, the leftmost, which is in the flight sim represented by the thousands of the transponder code. And you will see in a second why I'm using this. So it's digit 1, thousands. When I go to input, I'll take my MobiFlight cube here, and then I'll wiggle it around a little, and then I see it's encoder 3. That's the right one. And I have the on left and the on right event that I'm going to set, and I will use the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 event. So here we will find again, but in a different category under radio, because it's more like a standard event, we have transponder thousands decrement, and the opposite would be increment. So radio and then the transponder, and we will use increment. Very cool. So this works just fine. And I will say, okay. All right. And now I can go, oh, I have to go ready to fly. And I have to make sure that our sim status, I'm using the Steam version today. I also have to go and say offline mode off. Now we can zoom in here a little bit. And maybe I'm going to start this with the quick start. And we will turn on the dome light so that we see better. So let's zoom in here. So we have 7,000, and we can already go and manipulate it. You can see I'm dialing to the right. Oops, there it goes away, but we will fix that in a second. And I can also go to the left. So here we have this problem with leading zeros not being displayed. Why is that? Because if you take a look at the flight sim value here, it is showing us a 0. And we are, yeah, I mean, that's a 0. It's right aligned. How we can fix this? Super easy. We just add 10,000s to it. So we're using the transform to make our number artificially bigger, and we'll make it grow beyond the 4 placeholders that we actually have. Yeah, you remember 4 digits only. It's right aligned. So the leading one, it will not be ever shown, but it now makes sure that there is these zeros in their places. And you can see once we activate these changes, then it changes to 0, 0, 0, 0. That's really cool, easy fix. Another concept explained here with the transponder. I think it's really, really useful to have that. All right, and then we will quickly check what happens if we move to standby. So that's awesome. We can see this is already working. On altitude and all the other modes, they will always display it as altitude. And that's also fine for now. Okay, so I will leave it in altitude so that we make sure it's also turned on. So we are now able to do this. Cool, but how are we going to change the second position? So the second position we can change by duplicating this row, and we'll take digit 2, and that's the hundreds. Okay, so there's going to be a similar event to the one that we just used, but we will use the same device, only a different event. It is hundreds here, increment and decrement. And now when I'm doing this, oh yeah, they're changing as expected, but obviously they're changing both at the same time because we're still not really evaluating the position of our caret symbol. So we already created this caret variable, and we will use this as a precondition. And the preconditions at the moment require that it is a config item that we have identified. We cannot directly use a MobiFlight variable. So we already created it, so it's not a problem. Transport caret. So whenever the transponder caret value is giving us a 0, then we want to increase or decrease the first digit. We'll do the same thing now here, but we will say this should only be executed when the, okay, yeah, let's put a 1 in there. And then this should only be executed whenever there is a 1. And now you might know, okay, duplicate. Let's go on with the same logic. The tens, let's start here first. So now we take the tens decrement and increment the tens, and we have to make sure that we update the precondition. So the 2, this means the range goes from 0, 1, 2, 3. So first digit, second, third, and fourth. If the value is 2, then we are looking at the third digit, and we will do the same thing for the fourth digit, for the ones here. Like so. We have to go in here and manipulate this one, and then we'll go here and pick the ones and the ones here. Perfect. Cool. I will save, yeah, just in case. Better safe than sorry. Better saved than sorry. Nice pun, isn't it? And yeah, what we can do now is, you see, now I'm at the first digit. And we see we have a 0 in here. Now I go, it's going to be 1. It's not doing anything, interestingly. Now we go to the 2, it's not doing anything either. It's going to the 3. Why is that? What is the mistake? None of these preconditions is satisfied. So I must have made a error when defining this. Transponder caret equals 0. Correct. Transponder, oh, I just picked the wrong item and then I duplicated the wrong one. Transponder caret 1. Transponder mode, yeah. That's when you don't pay attention and then you duplicate, copy, paste, and you wonder why all the copies are also wrong. So the config item here. That looks way better. And now we're going to use this one more time, and for 3 digits, it's not going to be satisfied, which is the intended behavior, but for the first. So we'll keep this up. So now we're manipulating the first one. If I go to the next one, now I can dial in the second one. Now I'm at the 3rd position. Boof. And now I am at the 4th position. And now the only thing that is missing for us to make that really user-friendly is that our caret character is moving along with the position here. And now this is going to be also a fun exercise. So we will do transponder caret indicator, and we will duplicate this. We are actually, yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with simply using the same one, or we could also, instead of accessing the local variable, we could also reference the transponder caret. Let's do that for now. So this is also perfectly valid. By this we can say, use the transponder caret at the end, the output value, and use it here, set it statically. So now it will always be the same, and we can confirm this. Hold on. So now we can confirm. Oh, I'm still reading the wrong one probably. Yeah, okay. So now it's more obvious that we're really looking at the same output value from there. What we are doing is we are applying another compare, and I will split it up in 2 branches. So maybe this is also good to see. We know our values are 0 and 1 for the first 2 cases, and 2 and 3 for the second 2 cases. So whenever we are, if the current value is less than 2, then we know if can be either 0 equals 0. And if it is 0, well, then we will say the caret has to be in the first position. And then we have 3 spaces, correct? If it is 1, which we know because it's less than 2 but not 0, then the caret has to be in the second position. So I have 1 space, 1 caret, and 2 spaces. Boom. And now I can copy this over, and I use it in a second branch, and then here I say, if it's 2, because I know now it's not less than 2, so it can be either 2, well then I have 1, 2 spaces free, and then the caret symbol, and then I have an extra space. And for the last case, I would have 1, 2, 3 spaces, and the caret symbol at the very end. Make sure there is no spaces extra at the end, since we are right aligned. Otherwise, it would push it to the left and it would just not align correctly. Now we can take the indicator here. We can already try and see and verify that everything is working correctly. You can see that it is moving over from one side to another. And you will already guess that we are going to use this here in the display configuration, where we will say caret indicator, and we will pick the indicator symbol itself as a placeholder, and then we will just use 1, 2, 3, 4 So because we always know it's 4, it has a length of 4, it will be now substituted by MobiFlight for these placeholders, or the placeholders are going to get substituted with this value correctly. So let's check again. We will see that now it is moving from one side to another, and when it gets to the last digit, it will wrap around and start over at the first digit again. And we have made everything correctly and configured correctly, because now it is also indicating us here it's in synchronization with the precondition that we're using for our encoder. If you experience any lag with the encoder, then I recommend you to try to just disable logging. You will see and notice that when logging is not enabled, that the responsiveness of the encoders is going to be a lot better. All right, so now we are getting to the point that only the transponder mode is missing. And for this, I will use the button here on top, this switch. So whenever I hit the 1, I want that we are going to a specific transponder mode. And I don't want to simply go from off to standby, on, altitude, test, and so on. I actually also want to skip some. I want to have it very convenient for me to simply toggle between off, standby, and altitude. How are we going to do this? We apply many of the concepts that we have just reviewed together one more time. So I will say transponder mode, and we will create a MobiFlight variable, and we will call this transponder mode. And the that is, yeah, the transponder mode. We already have it named transponder mode, so let's give this, this is the variable. And we will go to the input section, and maybe that would have been better to start here. So let's say transponder mode. And the transponder mode, we will use our fancy button, which is, I forgot the name, so I will apply the trick with the logging again. So I'll go back in here and I'll go and grab this module and the device. I forgot, but if I now hit here the button, or if I push the button, I will see it switch 3-1. So I'm not a friend of these kind of very generic identifiers, but you can see that it's really easy to relate or find the correct button. Then the action input is going to be a MobiFlight variable, and we will increase by 1 every time. This now is going to be our reference, internal reference for the transponder mode variable. And we're not using the same variable apparently here. No, we're not. So that's why it was not working. Easiest is to just copy it from one place to another. There's going to be a better feature, or there's going to be a feature available soon where this can be a little easier. Maybe some autocomplete or so, autocomplete. Cool. So now if I hit this button, boom, 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 0, 1, 2, 3. And again, I will use the trick and make this only go from, we need off, standby, and altitude. So we only need 3. Trick modulo 3 gives us only 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. Amazing. And now what we're going to do is we will create another transponder mode off, where we use a precondition, where we use the config item, the mode variable, as a precondition. And whenever it is 0, well then we want to trigger an event, and the event is available in the MobiFlight Microsoft generic avionics section, where we have different transponder settings, and this is off. Now I clicked by accident. All right, so this is off. And then we'll duplicate this and we'll go to standby. And as we all know, we have to make sure that we update this event here correctly. And the precondition did not get saved. Well, that is kind of weird. I must have made something wrong. Maybe I did not click the apply, which is a little bit something that you can easily forget to do, and then your changes are not applied. And then we'll duplicate this one more time, and then we will put this in altitude mode. So whenever it is 2, we will put it in, we will put it in altitude mode. Very nice. Let's give this configuration a try. I'm pushing this button, it goes to off, then to standby, and then immediately over to altitude, because I don't need standby on or altitude. If you wanted to model that, obviously, or if you wanted to configure it, no problem. You know how to do it now. It's fairly easy. But you can also see that we kind of made an indirection going through a variable here to come up with our own sequence. And we're not using the internal enums. We're using these presets with a precondition based on the value that we are incrementing ourselves inside of MobiFlight. It's pretty cool. It's a nice concept. It's a nice tool to know about and to apply in some of these cases, such as this one. Last but not least, it's the transponder ident. Let's do this, Simon, over here. Transponder ident, and we go and we want to use switch 33, switch 3-3, and it's going to be I would like to use a an event, but I know that we have to update it on HubHop first. I have to use a custom input event, and I'm very sorry that I didn't do this before the video, but if we go to the official Microsoft SDK, unfortunately the preset that ships with MobiFlight must have gotten kind of, I know, did break probably with one of the recent SIM updates. So here, let's go to the event IDs. There you can also see where these originally come from in parts. And then we have transponder ident set, or better know, this one here, transponder ident on. And if you see any of these are the traditional K events. So we can use them like this, transponder ident on. And you know what? I will just we can update these values. Input transponder ident. So I'll go here and then I go edit and I'll fix this. And I save the changes. Now you see how easy it is to go into HubHop and contribute with your own configurations and findings and help to make it better. Okay, so let's bring these all back. Transponder ident. Okay, activate this. And you'll see that nothing is going to happen because our transponder is currently switched off. Let's put it into altitude mode. And now that we are firing this, nothing is happening either. And that is why, because we have done something wrong. Transponder ident on. Of course, I didn't do this correctly. Shame on me. Ooh. Sebastian. This is another way of doing it. Obviously, you should always be very, very sure that that the event that you're submitting to HubHop is also working correctly and not broken as I just did it. But now it's going to work. All right, let's give this a try. Boom. Oh, and we can see that the light is going on and we have our ID indication on our own transponder. We can see with a minimum amount of hardware, with just one encoder, one push button function, this tiny LCD display, and 2 additional buttons, we have a very complex logic accomplished, and we have been able to configure this all within MobiFlight without the need of like being able to code, just with some exceptions like the transformations that we are applying, or this little logic here. This is probably a little bit more of the advanced techniques, but anyway, I wanted to show this off to you guys to illustrate that there's a lot of flexibility with MobiFlight. And yeah, I hope that everyone has gotten something out of this video. I hope that everyone has now something new that you can apply in your next project. And please make sure that you subscribe to my channel so that you get a notification. Make sure to hit the bell. Also, join us on the Discord server. I mean, we're always happy to see new names there. Every day, somebody new's joining, and it's good to help each other through the Discord channel. There's also the forums on the website if you prefer that. I will take opportunity to make a shout out to the MobiFlight mods on the forum, on the Discord. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for helping all the different users of MobiFlight with their steps, regardless whether it's the first steps or they're already asking advanced questions. Doesn't matter. You're welcome to join us. See you soon there. And happy landings and enjoy MobiFlight. Stay safe and healthy. See you the next time.